welcome to Mind Over Matter. I'm Sophia, and I've been joined by the lovely Keyur. Hi Keyur, welcome to the show.
Hi Sophia, thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. You've got an incredible story to tell us. Let's start with your journey and what brings you here today.
So my journey, I guess, in a kind of snippet, is it talks about my cancer journey where I was diagnosed with cancer in 2012, potentially given a short time to live, come through the other side, and thankfully I'm here today because of the marvel of medicine. And then I went through a spiralling dark period in 2015 where I went through 6 bereavements in 7 months, and I didn't deal with it particularly well. And so I went down a really dark place, using alcohol as my sort of medicine, and I did the unfortunate, or I tried to do the unfortunate thing, and planned to take my own life. And then I didn't, and I came through the other side. And now I guess, without sounding cheesy, it's using my journey to hopefully help other people and steer them away from potentially getting to that dark place.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
We're grateful that you came out the other side.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And that it didn't go as planned. And you're here today to share your experience and hopefully, as you said, help others.
Yeah, that's the plan. I always say, if you can use what was a profoundly dark period of my life to hopefully help one person, and if that keeps one person away from suicide, then you know what, maybe, just maybe, all the rubbish stuff that happened, maybe it happened for a reason.
Absolutely, and you've saved a life.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So let's start with kind of that dark period. Can you pinpoint it? Is there a starting place where you can say, this is where it kind of began?
Yeah, I think it sort of started when I went through my separation at the time. So I was diagnosed with cancer in 2012, and then I got married that year because initially I was given a 3-month diagnosis of living potentially, and so everything kind of stops, doesn't it, when you're told you might have only a short time to live. Absolutely. You just think, well, I'll just go to where I'm going to go to and do what I'm going to do, and that separation, I think, was probably the catalyst that started it. But I think it was more, that culminated with the bereavements, I think, because it wasn't necessarily just one bereavement. It was the fact that there was 6 in 7 months, and it was, I had no time for my brain to reset itself. Yeah. And I describe this, so that's why and for everyone listening, they'll get used to my analogies of randomness, mainly because it makes sense in my simple brain, as I call it.
Sometimes they help.
They do, and if it helps people to understand mental health and depression, and
exactly,
then it's a good thing. So I describe it as an elastic band, and essentially, if your elastic band stretches because of some trauma or some difficulty, and it resets itself, you're then prepped for it to deal with another set of trauma, right? But what happens if you deal with cancer and then bereavement and separation, bereavement, eventually it's going to snap. Or it might be one huge trauma that makes it snap. And so what happens if it can't reset itself? And that's what happened to me. Yeah. It just was a culmination of so many different bereavements that I couldn't reset. And unfortunately, the only place, as elastic bands do, if you stretch and put enough pressure on them, they snap. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah, of course. And we're human, these things. Talk to us about, we had a conversation earlier about kind of the moments leading up to your suicide attempt. Talk to us about that and what was going on in your mind at that time.
So I guess for me, in that 7 months, and I'll take it back a step if that's all right. So when the final bereavement happened, which is my uncle, Bhaskar uncle in India, when he died, it was like the final culmination of, right, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. And then the way that I dealt with it is I just dealt with it through alcohol, and I dealt with it by focusing on anything else than the trauma that was impending in my mind. And so what led me to the suicide was 2 things really. The elastic band snapped, and I finally went down this really dark place. And one of 2 things happens when you go down a dark place. Somebody will save you, or you spiral further. And for me, when I didn't really talk to anyone about it, And then when I did talk to some people, I got responses like, pull yourself together, man up, sort yourself out. You know, Keyur, you beat cancer, you can beat this. And although they were trying to be helpful, I don't think they were very helpful, because what it left me feeling was, well, maybe I'm just being a burden. And for anyone who watches this video and knows me, knows that I never want to be a burden to people. So, well, actually, my friends would always say that I'm a burden because they always give me a lift everywhere. But I think I didn't want to put pressure on other people.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I'm being a burden and if there's that much pressure, maybe I just shouldn't be here.
You almost felt like you were to blame.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I thought, I don't want to be the person that's causing additional pressure to people. So if I kill myself, I'm not going to do that. It just ends, doesn't it?
Yeah. You felt like almost you were relieving them of your
stress, of my burden. Yeah.
And who were you kind of reaching out to for help? Was it family? Was it friends? Was it colleagues? And was the kind of response quite consistent?
So I didn't reach out to family. I mean, I think, you know, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, in the South Asian community, we don't often air our dirty laundry, and even to each other. Like, we just don't talk about this stuff, right? You know, if something's happened, then you keep it inside and you just deal with it. And that to me isn't particularly helpful, because actually all we really create is a culture that says don't talk about your feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I didn't talk to my family because it's not the dumb thing. I didn't talk to colleagues because, again, the culture in policing is very much was a taboo around mental health back then. You know, if you owned up to the fact that you had depression, potentially you might not ever work in firearms, might never work in counter-terrorism, you might never work in a specialist unit because you're seen as somebody that's got mental health issues, you know, and that's it, your career's over.
And that's taboo.
Massive. Yeah. And it's also potentially career ending. So I didn't tell anyone at work. And then I did try and talk to some friends about it, and the ones that I did talk to about it just weren't really helpful. They just had no empathy, which is why, for me, I guess, when I do these talks, and I do a lot of stuff on social media, and I do this thing called Kiwi's Wellbeing Wednesday. So every Wednesday I try and post a message around well-being, and I think it's in this is the 4th year I've been doing it, and I think what I always talk about is the need for empathy. And empathy's like any muscle, any tool, right? You don't wake up one day and that's it, you've got empathy. You have to work at it. You have to put effort into it.
You've got to exercise it.
Completely, yeah. And even myself, like my view around suicide when I was younger was, you're weak. Genuinely, that was my view. And I thought, if somebody kills themselves, how can things get that bad that you want to kill yourself? Isn't life really, really precious?
I think many people would share that view, actually.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you're 18, 20, and you've got no worries in the world, yeah, of course life is precious. But my view now, so being on the other end of it and telling people that I plan to take my own life is really weird for me. But I think the truth is, you have to learn empathy. You have to learn to choose a different mindset.
Yeah. And
I often say to people, I personally think if you don't have empathy in your heart and in your life, I think you're missing a part of your body. I genuinely believe that now, and I don't think it comes automatic. It's something you have to practice. And I use the examples of going to the gym, right? I can do pull-ups now, right? I can probably do 12 pull-ups in a row, right? Which is great. But when I first started doing pull-ups, I couldn't do any at all. I had to use the assisted machine and everything, right? So I had to practice getting better at pull-ups. I had to practice getting stronger. Empathy is the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a learned skill that you choose to get better at, or you choose not to.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to learn it. It's definitely a learned skill.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yeah. And that's what, you know, for me, I think was lacking in the people that I tried to reach out for. So I thought, if I'm being a burden, and this is how I felt, you know, if I was being a burden, maybe I just shouldn't be here.
What do you feel was, at that time, kind of one emotion that stood out for you? Was it shame? Was it frustration? Was it anger? Loneliness? What kind of stood out for you at that time? Or can you pinpoint it to one? Or was it kind of...
I can probably pinpoint to 2 emotions, really. So the first one is loneliness. You know, I would often divert my mind to other stuff. Yeah. You know, I was single at the time, so I was on every dating app you could imagine. I was going on dates, and I was, drinking lots, and I was going out and partying and having fun, and so I was diverting my mind. And I would be in a room with lots and lots of people, but be the loneliest person.
Yeah.
And the other feeling when the alcohol wore off and I woke up with a hangover, it was just a sense of complete hopelessness, and kind of impending doom with that hopelessness. And it felt like, I guess how I describe it is it just felt like a dark cloud had completely engulfed my brain, and I could see the light, and that was, I guess, the hope in me, because I genuinely believe hope is the most powerful emotion. It really is. In the darkest hour, if you've got a small amount of hope, it can cling you to life. And that I still had some hope, believe it or not, in a weird sort of way. I still had hope. And that's the optimist in me.
I mean, it's interesting because it is important, absolutely, but it can also be incredibly fragile. And, what would you say to those out there who've lost all that hope, who are in that sense of just complete despair?
So what I would say to those that have lost all hope is, I'd turn the phrase and I would say to their loved ones and friends and family, reach out, and don't reach out just once. And don't just ask somebody, how are you, once. I use the 3 rule, which is ask somebody 3 times how they are, right? If somebody really is okay, by the 3rd time, they're going to tell you to jog on. If they're not okay, by the 3rd time, they might open up. And so that's what I would say to friends if you think someone's losing hope. To the person that's losing hope, what I would say is, and I guess I want to word this carefully, I actually don't think anyone ever loses true hope. And I genuinely believe that. Even in my darkest hour, I didn't lose hope. Fully didn't lose hope, because there was a bit of me in my brain that said, maybe, just maybe. And I think what I would say to anybody is, when you think you've lost all hope, ask yourself this question: what if something was different? What if something was different? And it may not be, but what if it was? And that's the question I use actually with a lot of my friends when they talk to me about stuff. Lots of my friends have opened up very confidentially about lots of things. Yeah. And I ask them the question and they say, there's no hope left and there's nothing left. And I said, but what if there was? And they say, but there isn't. But what if there was? And there isn't. And I said, but what if there was? And then I remind them that you say there's no hope. I said, I'm sitting in front of you here. Yeah. As somebody that believes in you.
Yeah, as real proof.
Yeah. And so I think, which is why I bring back to my original point, hope comes from other people, and it comes from my loved ones, and it comes from the plain, basic simplicity of interaction with other human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it's a testament, isn't it, to human resilience and to the resilience of the human mind and the spirit, really, that you can come back from darkness. It is possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Brilliant. Let's talk more about perhaps your role now, what you do now as a mental health advocate. How important is that as a man, first of all, stepping forward into kind of the mental health space, and as a man from a South Asian background? You talked a bit about that as well. Yeah. I think it's really weird. Lots of people say to me, you're doing all this great work, Kiwi, and I've never been one to blow my own trumpet, and that's just who I am. But I've also always coined a phrase which is, I'm just doing things that are necessary. I've been a scout leader for 20 years, right? And I ran a scout troop for help, with help of others, ran a scout troop and an explorer scout unit. So I worked with 10 to 18-year-olds for about 10 years. I did it because it was something that was needed, and I got enjoyment out of it, massive, right? When you help a young person develop. And for me, it's the same thing around my mental health advocacy stuff. I have 2 tranches, I guess, of work that I do, and there's the cancer journey bit, and talking about cancer and breaking down the taboo and just getting people to be a little bit more honest and really having those difficult conversations, and almost sometimes pulling the elephant in the room and saying, do you know what? Let's just pull this really awkward thing called cancer. Let's pull it in the room and talk about it, right? Let's talk about the fact that men need to check their testicles. Let's talk about the fact that women need to check their breasts when they're in the shower. Yeah. Let's talk about ovarian cancer and the fact that you need to get screened. Why? Because it is a silent killer. Let's talk about these really, really embarrassing things. Men who are over a certain age
Do you know what? When you go to the doctor and the doctor has to put a finger up your bum, it's not because they're going to get something out of it. They're doing it because they want to check that your prostate is okay. Do you know what? Let's break down some of these goddamn barriers. And let's just be honest about it.
It's going to save lives.
Exactly, exactly. And I think what we need is a little bit more humility and a bit of humour around this stuff. And when I say humour, I'm very careful of how I word this, because I don't think anything I talk about is funny. But I do have humour behind it, right? And when I talk about my cancer journey, my cancer it's called chronic myeloid leukemia. It's a genetic mutation. So when I do these talks, I stand up on stage and I say, you know, this is my cancer, and it's called chronic myeloid leukemia, and I was told it's a genetic mutation, and I stop and I go, and I thought to myself, genetic mutation, I know where I've heard that, X-Men. And I thought, I'm going to get this awesome power, I'm going to get to move like metal and stuff like that, or read minds or fly. No, I have to go to Hammersmith Hospital for 3 months, and I take this dodgy chemo. No superpowers, just this horrible cancer, you know. But I think,
mind you, I think it's given you some special superpowers. Actually,
I think I think it has, and I think, you know, I'm very humbled by it. You know, I as I say, I do work around my cancer journey with Macmillan, and I try and break down barriers with cancer. You know, my father and I did this mother tongue video, which is, you know, it was a pleasure to do with my dad, and then I also do work with Movember, you know, because talking about men's health is a massive taboo. Men don't do it because there's this whole chivalry kind of like, I need to be hard and square your shoulders. Yeah. Which is
alpha male.
It's utter rubbish, right? Utter rubbish. I use this analogy like this: our body's made up of mental health, emotional health, and physical health. If you break your arm or your leg, where do you get treatment? Hospital. Do you spend 12 months in hospital? No. You have recovery at home, right? Treatment, recovery, simple thing that we understand when you break your arm or your leg. Counselling is your treatment. Your recovery happens when you're walking home, when you're having your spaghetti bolognese, or you're having a burger with extra pickles, or you're having your latte, or walking and talking to your friends, or walking in the park. Treatment, recovery. One's physical, one's mental. The difference is one you can see and one you can't.
Yeah, they're equally important.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. If you've got an injury, you'd treat it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, completely.
Go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Call the GP. You know.
Yeah.
So the same thing can be said of the mind.
Exactly. And I think I personally feel that I'm a young South Asian male who is a police officer, who's a scout leader, who has been through, you know, cancer, depression, tried to take his own life, or attempts to take his own life, and has come through the other side, right?
You've broken down a lot of barriers there.
Exactly, yeah. You know, I can break down tons and tons of barriers. And when I stand up, and I've probably done about 40 or 50 keynote speaks now, so keynote speeches, and for me, it was never about monetizing this, right? It was never ever about that. It was always about standing up and using it to hopefully help other people. And as I said before, if I can stand on stage, and I talked the other week to at an all-girls school, and I spoke to, I think, about 160 students, and if one of them can relate to something I've talked about and go, I need to reach out to my friends, I need to reach out to the teacher, I need to get some help, then maybe that stuff that happened in my life, maybe it was meant to happen. You know, as horrible as it sounds, maybe it was meant to happen. I'm not particularly religious, but I do believe in fate. And maybe our journey in life is meant to be the way it's meant to be.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, maybe I was meant to go through this stuff so that I can sit here now on a mental health matters program and talk about this to other people, so that they can watch this video at some stage and go, I can relate to that, you know.
And there'll be definitely, you know, young men out there watching you in the police force or from a South Asian background as well, just going through the same struggles and thinking, I'm not alone. No. And there is hope.
And I think just on that, actually, it's just come to my mind. I'm currently a police sergeant, and at the end of this year, I'm on like a fast track program within policing. It's a national fast track program. At the end of this year, I'll be an inspector, and so, you know, I'll have responsibility for a team of, you know, 3 or 4 sergeants and between 20 and 30 police constables. You know, if I can stand up as a leader and say, I've been through my own challenges and struggles, I hope that the rest of the team will go, yeah, do you know what? I can reach out to that governor and I can talk about it.
Yeah.
And I hope that it inspires other leaders to go, if we stand up and we go, I'm not completely perfect and stuff has happened in my life, but I've come through the other side, that actually leaders turn around and go, that is incredible resilience. That's what we need. Maybe we just need to be a bit more honest about that.
Like you said, just talk about things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be the cancer diagnosis, whether it be depression, just have open conversations about these things.
Yeah, and I think, I think the more that we talk about it, the more we break down barriers. When we break down barriers, we make conversations a little bit simpler.
Yeah.
When we make conversations a little bit simpler, people open up.
Yeah.
And if people open up, maybe, just maybe, they don't do what I did. And that's always been my ultimate hope, which is, I went to the darkest place that you can go. I literally had planned on that Monday morning at 11 o'clock at Osterley train station, I was going to jump in front of a train. And I knew it. I knew that time. I knew what was going to happen. And I chose, as I said, that time because on a Monday morning at 11 o'clock, there's no rush hour. More importantly, there's no children about. I'm going to cause least amount of disruption for people. And at the train station that I chose to jump in front of, I knew that I could do it at the last minute where the driver wouldn't see me. So I'd have least impact on everybody.
So even in your darkest moment, you were being like incredibly considerate.
Yeah.
I think that's a testament to like just human spirit, isn't it? Just
yeah, and I guess
human spirit.
that's who I am.
Yeah.
But I'm here today.
Yeah, absolutely, to tell your story. Before we finish, want to finish on a positive note. You mentioned this. Was it fitness or fosters? Is this your
yes?
thing?
Yeah. So my intervention, it came in a very unlikely place. As I said, I'd made this plan on a Monday. This is what I was going to do on a Monday morning, and over the weekend, I think it was a Sunday, and I was scrolling through YouTube on the short videos.
Yeah.
So I was scrolling through YouTube, and this video came up saying calisthenics saved my life. I thought, what's this? So I clicked on the video, and it was about a story about a guy in America who had gone through similar mental health issues as myself, but had been hospitalised. And in the hospital that he was in, there was a little fitness area, and it was like a pull-up bar and a dip machine and stuff. And he went out and he started doing pull-ups. And the more he did pull-ups and push-ups and exercise, his antidepressants were being lowered to a point where he didn't need them anymore. And the fitness became his antidepressant. And my brain went to the hope bit which is why I always talk about hope being so powerful. Maybe there's hope. Yeah. So I thought maybe if I just let me see what happens. Yeah. So I did 50 push-ups and 50 squats. And when I was doing that, I didn't think about wanting to kill myself. I didn't think about the cancer or the depression or the death.
Focus, didn't you?
I had another focus, and all the focus was next press up, next press up, next press up until I got to 50. Next squat until I got to 50. And the release of endorphin I got in my body, I can feel it now, right? And it was just incredible. And it was a better fix than any Fosters. And so at that point, I was like, maybe I'll put off suicide for the moment. And instead, on Monday, I thought maybe I can just do some exercise.
Maybe I could go to the gym.
So instead, I didn't want to drink at night because I wanted to wake up without a hangover. And so I woke to go to the gym and work. I woke up the next day and I worked out. And in that moment of at 45 minutes I was working out, I forgot about everything.
Yeah.
And in the 45 minutes afterwards, my endorphins level was so high. I felt like such a great buzz.
And it's a natural buzz, isn't it?
Yeah.
You feel like it's natural high.
Completely. Yeah. And so I call it fitness over Fosters.
Yeah. And you've made a conscious decision to choose exercise over antidepressants or anything like that.
Completely, yeah. And I'm not against antidepressants. I think I've got friends and I've spoken to lots of people about my view on it, and I don't have a view. I think it's about doing whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And for me, I bring it back to the gym analogy, which is some people like high intensity training, some people like power building, some people like cardio, some people like yoga. Everyone's different. It's whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And for me, fitness became my antidepressant. And the more I started doing it, the more, for me, it helped me to switch off. And then what I then did is it helped me to get into therapy and get counselling and got help, and then here I am.
Yeah, here you are.
Yeah.
Talk to us today.
Yeah.
Thank you. What an incredible story.
No,
Really.
thank you.
Really. I think it's really testament to, like you said, hope, to know that there's still hope out there, and to the human resilience and the strength that you have. So thank you for sharing that with us.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me
all
on.
the best of your mental health advocacy.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us. See you in the next episode.